All right, well, welcome everyone. Welcome to Bolton Valley, Vermont. It is finally a beautiful day, which is so lovely. I'm Christine McGowan. I'm with the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund, and we are hosting this event today with several partners who you're going to meet along the way. So I just wanted to say a few words of welcome, and then we're going to turn it over to our plenary panel. But first of all, I just want to acknowledge that while it is beautiful and sunny out, we recognize that this has been a really, really challenging summer for a lot of people in this industry. It continues to be. The incredible flooding that we've seen here in Vermont and just the generally wet weather has made it very, very difficult to work in the woods. So just want to acknowledge that we really appreciate folks taking the time to be here. We know that times have been challenging, but we hope that today's content will actually help us all think about what does the future look like and how can we help this industry to grow and thrive given sometimes incredibly challenging conditions. So I also want to thank our sponsors. We were really fortunate this year that one of our partners, the Northern Forest Center, was able to help us with this event today through some funding that they received from the U.S. Endowment for Forestry and Communities and the U.S. Economic Development Administration. So we really want to thank you for helping make this possible and make this event free of charge for attendees. So that is just wonderful, and we thank you so much. And also the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative and the Agency of Commerce and Community Development have all along the way been big supporters of this event and the work that we do. So I just want to thank them for all the support that they're giving us. I know that there are a few folks in the room, or at least they were registered, who I just wanted to acknowledge. And I believe, I know I've seen Representative Jed Lipsky from Stowe, who is here, so thank you for being here. And I saw on the list Representative Catherine Sims. I don't know if she's here yet, but definitely saw her on our list. And Representative Carl Demrow, and Senator Andy Perchlik. Oh, okay, there. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And Senator Perchlik, I think, at least was signed up, so hopefully he will be here. But I just want to say thank you to them. We really appreciate the work that you're doing in the legislature, and those of you in the Rural Caucus. We know you've been very interested in what happens with this industry, so thank you for that support, and thanks for being here to help us talk about what is needed. So just a quick overview of what you'll be doing today. So we're going to kick things off with a panel discussion that's going to be led by Joe Short with the Northern Forest Center and several partners who are in the room to talk about a really cool initiative that is just getting going. It's a really great coalition that I'm hoping that everyone in this room will in some way be participating in the work that's going to happen. So they're going to talk more about that in a moment, but it's a really great regional forest economy initiative. And then after that, we're going to take a short break to move everyone over across the road to the Timberline Lodge, and that is where we're going to have 3 breakout sessions. So it's a little less than a 5-minute walk. It's close to where you parked. So we'll give you 15 minutes to get there, but if you could move right along to get out there, because we want to start those promptly at 10:30. And then when those wrap up at noon, we're all going to come back here for lunch. It's going to be a wonderful buffet lunch that Bolton Valley has put together for us. And then after lunch, we're going to turn things over to the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation, who are going to walk us through where we're at with the Vermont Forest Future Strategic Roadmap process. That has been underway for the last year plus, and we're getting down to the real nitty-gritty here, and so we're really glad to have this day to get the thoughts from people in this room and ideas. So that's going to be an exciting thing that'll happen. We'll kick it off here in this room, and then again we're going to walk over to the other side of the road, and there will be 5 breakout sessions that you can choose from. And when those wrap up at 4, we will do a little happy hour. So there's a bar over there, and we will wrap things up there. And I just noticed, I see Commissioner Danielle Fitzko here, and I see former Commissioner Michael Snyder here. So thank you both for being here. And Danny will be leading us on with the afternoon, but good to have you both here. And all the other FPR folks who are here. So great to see you all. Let's see, what have I missed? Oh, just as a reminder, you've seen some cameras around. So we're videotaping this session and the 3 breakouts. So when those are, we're recording those. When they're available, we will post those on our website and our YouTube channel, and I will get out a newsletter to everyone who's attending to make sure that you see those. So if you can't be at all the sessions, you will be able to watch those recordings later. So those will be available hopefully in a couple weeks. I don't know, we'll see how quickly we get that done. Let's see, what am I missing? Oh, CEU credits. So if you are a forester, there are SAF credits available, so please be sure to sign in over at the table. And if you are a LEAP logger and you're looking for those credits, you can also do that. And if you are somebody looking for AIA credits, so Ricky McLean, the session that he's doing on mass timber, there are AIA credits available for that, so he'll have a sign up for that session over there. And then for SAF, a certificate, at or after lunch, we will hand those out to you. So be sure to pick that up over at the table with our friends who will be manning that table. And bathrooms are back here in this room. So if you need that, just feel free. And of course, on the other side of the road, there are bathrooms on both levels. And there's also an elevator, so if anybody needs that. Okay, I think I got all the housekeeping done. So I'm gonna turn things over. So the Northern Forest Center and Joe Short, he's gonna kick things off. If you don't know the Northern Forest Center, I don't know where you've been because they are involved in so much across Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Northern New York. Their region is the Northern Forest region, and they do a lot of economic and community development work with forest communities. And so we're really excited to have them. And of course, if you don't know Joe Short, you should, because he's kind of everywhere, and I'd be shocked if somebody in this room doesn't know him, but hopefully by the end of today you will. So anyway, I'm gonna let Joe introduce the topic and the panel, and we'll take it away.
Thank you, Christine. I appreciate it. And that kind introduction on top of this throne that I'm sitting in really elevates me in a way that I don't know that is necessary, but thank you. It's really good to be here and to see this group of people together. I think it's fantastic that the Jobs Fund is able to, I think it speaks to their network, Christine's ability to connect with all of us, keep this sector, diverse as it is, together and coming together. So I want to thank them for this opportunity, and I'm excited to help kick this off. This day focused on innovation and opportunity and the future of the forest sector. I want to say, I observe innovation happening every day in this sector. You all figuring out how to solve problems that often come up quickly, adapt in how you manufacture your products, how you manage forests, how you respond to customers, and asking constantly for new things. So I just want to say, there's already a lot of innovation, I feel, in this space. But innovation is also about developing and introducing to the market new products and services that customers value and begin to demand. And I think that's really a big focus for today, both what we want to share as your opening panel and in the examples and stories that you'll have a chance to hear about in the breakout sessions. As Christine mentioned, back in 2018, which feels like a lifetime ago, our Northern Forest Congressional Delegation, Senator Leahy was a leader, but others from across the states, appropriated $3 million to the U.S. Economic Development Administration with an explicit guidance that they focus those resources on growing markets for wood and wood products from the Northern Forest. We partnered with the National Foundation, the U.S. Endowment for Forestry, and with the EDA, the Economic Development Administration, to secure those resources, and since 2020 have run a subgrant program to invest in a set of really 13, I think, pretty cool projects across the Northern Forest, 2 of which you're going to hear about in the breakout sessions later this morning. This morning, we want to share kind of an evolution and a next generation of some of that work, something called the Coalition for Northern Forest Innovation and Research. Earlier this year, that coalition responded to an opportunity from the National Science Foundation, which is looking for unique regional innovation opportunities from around the region, or I'm sorry, from around the country. And forgive my reading here, but the charge was to develop innovation strategies that advance critical technologies, advance societal and economic challenges, promote economic growth and job creation, and cultivate regional talent. And we said, forests can do that in spades. So this idea was initiated by some partners at UMaine. We have Shane to thank or blame, depending on how this goes. But the coalition came to include the Northern Forest Center, the Maine Development Foundation, University of New Hampshire, and the University of New Hampshire Cooperative Extension, University of Vermont, the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund, and the Forestry Accelerator at Vermont State University. I think really kind of a rock star set of organizations, pretty deeply steeped in the sector, well networked, and we hope that serves all of us collectively in making sure that your ideas are part of this. We submitted a proposal, and our region was one of 44 coalitions selected nationally for a Regional Innovation Engine Development Award. There's lots of fancy terminology I'm learning that comes out of the National Science Foundation, but here's what that means. We're focused on 3 areas of potential innovation in the forest sector: precision forest management, traditional forest products, and bio-based materials, and 3 parts of the innovation process, starting with research and development, then looking at translation of innovation to practice, which I think that's really about how do ideas move from concept to commercialization, and then workforce development, recognizing that both for current products and future ones, a good workforce pipeline is essential. Geographically, we're focused at minimum on Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. We are exploring partnership connections in New York and Massachusetts as well. I think the strength in thinking about this regionally, I know this is a room that appreciates we all have our state boundaries, and there's a bit of parochialism that comes with it, but this is a regional industry and a regional sector that crosses state bounds. And particularly as we think about the globe and global forests and global markets for wood products, one of our goals is really to elevate this whole region as a place that folks from away look at and say, that's a place where there is great innovation and great stuff happening, and that being a driver for attracting new entrepreneurs, new investment to our sector. So for the next 18 months, our task is to understand and map out some of the most promising innovation opportunities for the region and what's required to realize those opportunities. Our hope is that this will be a strategy and an investment roadmap that does what I just described, really elevates this region and some specific opportunities in it and their innovation potential as a means to attract both public investment and private investment to forest industries in the Northern Forest. We are not starting from scratch. There's a lot of really good work already done. Shane and Erica are involved with something called the Forest Opportunity Roadmap over in Maine, which for years now has been looking at a very similar set of questions and done some great work. Here in Vermont, as Christine mentioned, the Working Lands Initiative, I think, has also been mapping out paths, identifying important opportunities. There's the current Vermont Forest Future Roadmap, this afternoon's focus. The Northeast State Foresters have taken a look at developing markets for wood and wood products. So there's a lot of good fundamental work already done, and starting and building from that, what we're hoping to do is identify the existing and needed R&D processes that exist across this region, both within our academic institutions, but also in other places. The infrastructure and the practices for getting more and faster innovation in forestry and wood products. We're hoping that we can facilitate some collaboration to create more commercialization and innovation strategies based on this region's wood basket. and its manufacturing capabilities. And we want to identify some of those pathways towards increased workforce skills and participation in forest-based careers, including, and this is important, I think, expanding participation by traditionally underrepresented populations. How do we get more people interested in working in this sector? We all know, I think, very well the challenges facing the sector, and we're not seeking to ignore those in this initiative, but I think our intent is that this work is really not about rehashing those, but focusing on the opportunity, the positive. I think we have such an opportunity here as a sector that takes care of land, that produces products that fundamentally are renewable, that can be regenerated and recycled at a time when the world really needs and is asking for a lot more of those. So we should have a moment of opportunity here, and that's what we're really focused on. What we want to do this morning with our coalition partners is have a conversation about some of the very questions that we're going to be asking and trying to develop some decent answers to through this initiative over the next 18 months. And then we're going to hopefully hear from you, your answers to some of those questions and some of the innovation needs and opportunities that you're most excited about. So with that, I could introduce everyone, but I'd love for you to hear their voices and not hear mine. So I'm going to pass the mic on this side, and then I think you all have a mic behind you there. So we'll have a mic on that side and one on this side. I'll pass this one for my colleagues to introduce themselves, and then we'll get going.
Thanks, Joe. Good morning, everybody. Tony D'Amato, the director of the Forestry program at the University of Vermont.
Good morning. I am Jared Reynolds. I run Due North Co-working, and within Due North, we have several entrepreneur-focused programs, one of them being the Forestry Accelerator, which is in its second year, working with 8 companies from throughout North America.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. I'm Erica Watson. I work at the Maine Development Foundation, and I work primarily on workforce education and development, so I help support the Workforce Committee for Maine, which is the Forest Opportunity Roadmap.
Hi, everyone. Andy Fast with University of New Hampshire Cooperative Extension. So Extension's the outreach arm of the university, so I work a lot with loggers, forest-based businesses, manufacturers, and helping them do the things they need to do. Thanks.
Good morning, everybody. Shane O'Neill from the University of Maine. I'm a Forest Industry Business Development Manager. Similar role to what Andy does, but in the state of Maine. So a lot of outreach to businesses and to forest-based communities on business development and economic development opportunities and new product development and better utilization of our resources.
And then I'll just add that another partner, Christine, is actually part of our group as well in the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund. So I think in sum, what I'm excited about is we've got all of our state universities at the table and their resources and knowledge, R&D capacity, and we have a set of organizations in UNH Cooperative Extension, Maine Development Foundation, the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund, and the Northern Forest Center, who I think interface pretty well both with business and community across the region. So that combination, I feel like we don't always do the best job bridging between practice on the ground and what's happening in our universities and vice versa. And hopefully this will be a good coalition to do more of that. We're going to start our conversation really on the innovation opportunities and what we're already seeing and perceiving as areas that hold great opportunity. I want to start with Shane, who as he mentioned, Forest Opportunity Roadmap process in Maine has been looking, I think, at these very questions for quite a while. What's kind of the next generation set of forest products and services that can sustain Maine's forest products industries? So Shane, I think it would be great to, drawing from that, start with you and what that process has concluded about where industry and market needs are aligning with R&D capacity, and what that process has pointed to as some of the biggest innovation opportunities.
Sure, Joe. So with the Forest Opportunity Roadmap, it's for Maine, We have a web presence. You could look it up, formaine.org. We've been going through this process about 6 years now, and one of the activities was a global market analysis, looking at where the global trends for different products and materials are and market demands for it, and then looking internally at what are the wood resources that are in our area, what are the manufacturing capacities and the R&D infrastructure that can support these different products. And from that analysis, it was found 6 key areas of potential opportunity, which included 3 more traditional products that are not new, but are new to the area, which were dissolving pulp, laminated veneer lumber, which is a structural building material, and the third one was medium density fiberboard. So a lot of your ready to assemble furniture, things like that, are manufactured from MDF. And it's a good use of low value residuals from the forest. And then there were 3 others that were the more emerging technologies, one being nanocellulose materials, and then the other 2 were bio-based chemicals and bio-based fuels. So these are up-and-coming technologies that have future, that are expected to be much more prominent into the future, and really are about decarbonizing and removing of petrochemicals from our day-to-day life. And so these were these kind of 6 areas of focus that we then start exploring what business infrastructures are needed, what is the wood supplies, and add all that up to then use for business attraction purposes.
Thanks, Shane. Andy, you work in New Hampshire interfacing with lots of different types of businesses in the forest sector. What would you offer in terms of the innovation and market opportunities that you hear about in that work?
Yeah, always tough following up Shane. He does such a good job of articulating this stuff. So, I really think we have a regional economy, so it's not that much different over in New Hampshire in terms of opportunities. So I'd like to sort of just step back a little bit and, say like often what I see is first businesses sort of have to be champions of their ideas. So we can come up with all sorts of opportunities, and they're out there. There's so many great opportunities that are out there, but the specific businesses need to own the idea and want to implement them because there's barriers there. I see a few different, with the innovations I see and the opportunities I see, I put them in a few different buckets. So one's kind of this necessary innovation, and you touched on it right at the beginning. Every day businesses are dealing with stuff, so they respond to it, whether it's labor or log supply, whatever it is, they're doing things that are exciting and needed, and the best use of their capital because, they're making that assessment. So, that's kind of reactionary in terms of, I think, what we're focusing on in terms of more proactive opportunities. I think I put them in 2 buckets. So we sort of have these traditional businesses that will do really neat, fascinating things, but they tend to do it really quietly. They know their business, they know where the opportunity is, they don't talk to anyone, and then they do it, and often folks don't even know they did it. So I'll give just 2 examples. We have a firewood processor that's sawing their firewood instead of splitting it. Works amazing for them. Everyone thought they were nuts, crazy idea, who'd do that? Works well, helps with like automation, all that sort of stuff. There's another landscaping type business that put in a grinder that allows them to use basically pine pulp in potting soil and substituting that for, I think, perlite or something like that, which has gone up in price. No one knows. Really good, exciting, I think, innovative stuff and innovative ideas. And just quickly, then you have kind of this other bucket, which I think of some of these other ideas, which tend to be newer entrepreneurs that come to the region that want to start something. And this may not be deliberate, but I find it's much more visible and vocal. And I think that serves both a great marketing. It really helps with marketing. Everyone knows the idea. We're so hungry to support these ideas that, it gets the message out there. And then also it gets feedback from all these other professionals that are knowledgeable in their different industries that can help inform that, newer entrepreneur in getting a successful product. So hope I didn't take too long, but that's kind of how I see it and how it complements what Shane's saying.
No, that's great, Andy, and I think illustrates one thing I think a lot about looking regionally is different scales of industry and business across this landscape. Maine obviously still has very large forest products industry and processing, and you still have pulp mills, and that opens up certain lanes of product types and innovation. I think more in New Hampshire and Vermont, more businesses of the scale that Andy is alluding to, and I think that's both part of our challenge and our opportunity is to think about these different innovation pathways and ideas that have on-ramps for businesses of all scales, because we know that that's needed. This industry needs businesses of all scales at all steps in the supply chain. So if we focus too much on just one node of it, we know that's not going to support the entire sector. And that's one thing I'm excited about, is to try to map out across the northern forest landscape what that mix might look like. We are also focused, not just on products, but on silviculture and the need for innovation there as well. I think, unfortunately, this summer has illustrated in some ways why. The need for potential changes in practice to be able to get into the woods and manage forests as the climate is increasingly just not normal. It's going to be different. And also recognizing a lot of increased societal attention on the role of forests in carbon storage and sequestration, and thinking about, well, how does silviculture serve those goals while also serving the goals to produce fiber and timber for products. So Tony, I'll pass you the mic and ask that, from a forestry perspective, what are some of the advances you're thinking about and most excited about?
Yeah, and selfishly, silviculture is always the most exciting, but really I think a lot of what we're talking about now is as we get into looking at the key end of that supply chain, getting trees cut and out of the woods and doing it in ways that can adapt to what we had this summer, what we had last summer, what we aren't getting in the winter, is that we're really getting a compressed season to work within. We're seeing new things come on the horizon every year, whether it's beech leaf disease this year, emerald ash borer 5 years ago, changing environmental conditions in general, that the woods are changing rapidly, and for us to be able to still operate and be efficient in those windows, we need to start leveraging some of the technology that a lot of other industries are already leveraging. And so it's always tough for a lot of us, including me. We want to have boots in the ground. That's the best way to make decisions about the forest. But as Joe mentioned in the introduction, there's a lot of discussion now broadly around precision forestry. And so how do we kind of leverage technologies to really give us things like wall-to-wall inventories via LiDAR, or really detailed terrain maps that allow us to lay out roads and also lay out potential alternative roads if that one blows out during an unexpected precipitation event. And so really leveraging kind of the advances in geospatial technology that are happening at places like UVM, UNH, UMaine, and elsewhere, and still harnessing our own brains as well as the inventories to really get a better handle of what's out in the woods. Because as Joe mentioned, it's not just kind of adapting to those changes, it's also societal expectations. And so if we can be managing an area and actually show a wall-to-wall map of the volume harvested, a wall-to-wall map of the carbon and some of the benefits that were provided by that, as well as protect ecologically sensitive treatment areas, all those things we do on the ground, but we're really trying to do it in a way that's quicker and really takes advantage of both evolution in LiDAR, drones, the things some of us are worried about, artificial intelligence, really leveraging those things to our advantage and really getting a better handle on just what we're doing out there in the woods and allowing operators to be more efficient, as well as us to be able to anticipate and predict what might happen over time. And so a lot of the emphasis of the group, so Mark Ducey at UNH and Aaron Weiskittle at UMaine are some of the other folks that are working on this, is really still getting out in the woods, but also getting above the woods to really understand, what we can do out there for precision forestry and how that might allow us to make better decisions on the fly, whether it be due to an outbreak of insects or, a 7-inch rainfall event, which sounds like a low one to some based on what we had this summer.
So that, I think, hopefully starts to scratch the surface on some of the ideas that we're going to be looking at. And again, I feel like a lot of the work to understand these opportunities has been done. And a large part, I feel like, of our charge is coalescing that, putting it together in something that we as a sector can understand and look at, and then begin to elevate, more with a collective voice and a regional voice to say, hey, these are the exciting opportunities for advanced forest management and new products and services alongside our continued strength in traditional products. again, really just to elevate this whole region as a place where we want folks to look at it with excitement and say, yeah, that's a place, if I have entrepreneurial ideas in this space, that's where I want to be. So part of that then is turning those innovative ideas into commercial realities, and this is a place where a lot of things seem to stumble. There are certain technologies I feel like I've been hearing about for 20 years. It's like, oh, we're almost there on that. It's like, okay, well, when do we get there? So that turning those ideas into commercial products is not an easy thing. And for a couple of years now, the Forestry Accelerator at Due North has been working with businesses in wood products to help them do exactly that. So as we start to think about what we're going to be looking at to, what will it take for more forest products businesses to be able to take ideas from an idea to action, want to turn to Jared and ask, from that experience with the accelerator, what you're seeing is required to take an idea from research to ideation to commercialization and acceleration. Lots of words there, right? But all important.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So I think we have this particular interest in lowering the barriers to getting a new business off the ground. And like Joe said, from an idea to figuring out if it's this sustainable business to actually determining what the market is and launching and growing this business. And many people in here own a business and know that there are significant barriers to making that happen. And that those barriers are particularly even more challenging when it's a new technology, when it requires research, when it requires specific space or testing, and when they're capital intensive. A business that requires tens of millions of dollars obviously has this real barrier. And so a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, sort of envisioned this accelerator to address some of those barriers. So one barrier that we saw was that emerging technology and new businesses need considerable connections to industry, to everybody in this room, that those provide this critical feedback, guidance to determine if this is a market-aligned product, if there's any demand, if it's addressing an actual industry problem. And so through this accelerator, we've organized lots of panels, webinars, presentations throughout this 4-month program. So businesses are continually getting this feedback so that they can continue to hone that product. Additionally, we thought, especially for a hard tech business in the forest industry, there needs to be considerable upfront research. It's not like a software company where you can launch, iterate, fail, relaunch. If you're going to be spending $10 million, $20 million on a new technology, a lot of upfront research has to happen. You have to understand the market you're entering. You have to be really certain, or as certain as you can be when you're launching a new business, which, as we know, is risky, that's going to work. You have to get that feedback. You have to understand that. And so we've tried to bridge that divide to make starting a new business, a new technology more accessible, to lower that barrier. Through this initiative, I'm excited to see how else we build out this innovation pipeline that addresses other challenges, how we bring earlier stage ideas, connect them with testing, things that the University of Maine and Shane offers that lower that capital barrier, really bridge or provide early resources to new ideas, build a pipeline to resources like the accelerator, and then address the capital gap, that it's really hard to launch, again, a capital intensive business. So how we develop diverse capital resources towards the forest industry that might not have had what a software startup has in the past. And so that's really what we're working on, and always thinking about the resources that make it easier to start a new business, especially one that's capital intensive, that's new, that might be research based, that is entering really uncertain markets.
Thanks, Jared. So many of us have worked with businesses who are trying to start up and bring new ideas to market. So I want to ask the whole panel at this point if you have other things you'd add to what Jared has shared or affirm in terms of some of those gaps that you've seen in that continuum from idea to commercialization that you think are important to note.
I think one of the big things is a lot of times businesses don't understand the full suite of opportunities available to them for funding. So a lot of times we have state programs that don't necessarily advertise themselves very well. So just a knowledge of what is available to them to help move their business forward, whether it's through like the small business administration type systems, or like for instance, in the state of Maine, you have the Maine Technology Institute, you have FAME, CEI, these other programs that unless you're in that space working day in and day out, you don't necessarily know they exist. So if you're an entrepreneur but you're not wired into that network, you don't see those opportunities for funding.
Do you want to jump in, Andy? I'm just
Well,
thinking about it.
Yeah, no, I was trying to formulate, so I'm not sure how this will come out, but I guess I'll jump right in. I guess, just piggybacking on what Shane said, I sort of think about, I'd want to say two things, just big picture, but also like just in terms of resilience and support of businesses as they're kind of commercializing these ideas. I think there's a lot of research and then just anecdotal evidence that, whether it's new businesses, new corporate ventures, whatever you want to call it, or whatever it is in whatever time frame, they tend to lose money for a while. And so it's really nice, so 5 to 7 years, or cite your statistic, but generally folks lose money for a bit. And so how do you also build in and support that resilience for those entities that may not have that support network already, right? So if you already a bigger business that's already making plenty of money, if they decide it makes sense, they can allocate some resources and recognize big picture, it makes sense, but a smaller startup, and as Jared's talking about, how do you build in just more of that resilience? And then just wanted to mention, sorry if this is a little off topic, but you talked about this, but I wanted to say explicitly, what we're doing is really for folks, for the businesses, for all of you out here. So we're creating a framework, I think, or trying to create a framework, but through this process, we're going to be engaging, hopefully, all of you in this process, want to hear from you and want to adapt to your needs. So we're not trying to push something from the top down. We're trying to create resources and a framework that can support you. And I think we're all very flexible in whatever ways we can to adapt what we're doing to better meet the needs you all have. So I hope it's all right I mentioned that too.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. And I think that I'm going to try to connect those 2 points. I do think that, there are grant programs available for businesses. There's, of course, the, WeLab grants here in Vermont, which are great. But they're never enough, right? And we work with a number of businesses that really, they struggle, even though they have really good business plans, and can point to the fact that yes, after a period of startup where they, maybe losing money, they should be primed to succeed, but are still challenged to attract, private capital or bank financing, And I think that's one thing I'm hoping, to Andy's point, I think by certainly, elevating some of these opportunities, doing a better job of pointing to successes and businesses that have made it work, and particularly on this narrative of these are climate-friendly products, right? Which a lot of research is saying that's what consumers are going to be asking for. That combining those two things, elevating the ideas that are already coming from industry, coming from the field, and through this regional approach and through hanging the attention of the National Science Foundation on it. Maybe we can use that to attract more of that capital, or at least interested investors who don't look at this as like a legacy industry, but look at it as a future industry that they're excited to help advance. So I want to come now to Erica and workforce, which, as I said, is kind of the third lane that we're looking at through this initiative. I think we all appreciate workforce challenges. Not just in the forest product sector, but across the board right now, and recognize that without that good workforce pipeline and new people coming into the industry, even the most innovative, awesome ideas may have a hard time advancing. And Maine has been putting a lot of attention on this, and Erica's very much steeped in it. So I want to ask you from that work in Maine. What have you all seen and concluded about how aligned current workforce development and current workforce is with what the forest products industry is asking for, or or needing? And what are you all looking at as some opportunities to build that more aligned, skilled, and inclusive workforce?
Sure, thanks, Joe. So for Maine, we haven't talked too much about the structure, but one of the committees that commissioned some research was the Workforce Committee, and so we were looking at what are the current and future workforce needs in terms of building a talent and skilled pipeline of workers. And in that came a number of recommendations, many of which the Workforce Committee has adopted, and some of those include better alignment with the workforce systems within the state of Maine, whether that be the Department of Labor or state workforce boards and education and training opportunities. So we've been really focused on how to align better with that workforce system, and I can get into the details a little bit more. The committee has really focused on place-based work, meaning that we know that we have a lot of rural communities in the state, and we need to keep our youth and our people there to be able to meet the talent and skills that are needed within the workforce and within the businesses that are there. So we've been working with some local organizations, going into schools and communities and doing some of that place-based kind of work. We've also been trying to align better with education and training programs, so that could include, K through 12, adult education, which is very strong in the state of Maine, and also our community college system, university system, and some private institutions. So we have a number of initiatives going. The committee is really focused on, in the K through 12, really focused on middle school forward. Simultaneously, while the committee was looking at these recommendations and deciding how to move forward, the state of Maine was putting forward its 10-year economic development strategy. And one of the things that I think is often overlooked while we're developing these sort of education and career and talent pipelines is that when you're looking at a 10-year horizon, if you start that today, if you will, 10 years from now, you're looking at folks or kids who are 8 and 9 years old. So you're looking at your second and third graders as your talent for 10 years from now. And so I think that's something that we really need to kind of keep in mind, that there is this continuum, and it's starting much earlier than a lot of us realize. So one of the projects for Maine has been really looking at how to support that middle school and high school CTE, so technical programs, and again, looking at that place-based sort of programming. So we've worked with different CTE programs as possible. We've also worked with an organization called Rural Aspirations, so really growing the aspirations of kids that are within our rural communities, exposing them to different opportunities across the sector, and going into the schools and going, into the classrooms. We've also worked really closely with the Maine Department of Labor, and one of the focus areas to help better align the workforce system, the Department of Labor really did recognize that there was not a comprehensive workforce portal or workforce sort of communication, if you will, across the state. And so they've really invested in what are called industry partnerships, and For Maine would be considered industry partnership, where it's an industry-led coalition working with education and training education and training, working with social service agencies and others to really be able to elevate the sector and knowledge about career and education pathways for the sector. So we actually do have a grant with the Department of Labor, and we are creating education and career pathways for some of the most highly needed careers within the sector. One of the challenges there, and we may get to this more in a second, really is trying to be prepared with the talent and skills needed to meet the needs of like emerging technologies and the growing sectors within the state. So that is one of the challenges. But this grant really is allowing us to also work with different industry representatives to really take a deep dive into the talent pipeline, and as Joe alluded to earlier, really try to figure out how it is that we can diversify the talent pool within the industry. So we do know that we have populations within the state that are historically underrepresented within the workforce, and so how do we tap into different talent pools that are within the state of Maine? Within Maine, we do know our demographics, 1.3 million people across a fairly large area, so we're pretty spread out. But we do know that the growth in the state is coming from a more diversified population, and that includes all counties in the state of Maine. So really, we're able to right now dig into how we can, again, diversify that talent pool, what that would look like to not only recruit, but also retain. And that's probably the harder nut to crack, really, if you will, is the retention. So those are some of the projects that we're working on. We also know that there is a general lack of awareness of the opportunities across the sector. And we know that there's we've had a number of paper mills close within the state, and so there's just a general uncertainty around, the longevity of jobs and whether it's a field to get into. So we're also doing a lot of work to really highlight what is available and the realities going forward.
Great. So I know that a lot of what Erica is talking about resonates in this room because I've sat in very similar conversations here in Vermont about a lot of those same issues, reaching kids earlier in the system, with opportunities. And I think this is one of those places where we can learn from each other as a region. I see no reason not if Maine comes up with some good workforce development ideas. We're not going to be stealing workers from Maine here or vice versa. I think there's some good ideas that if they do work and are resident and already have a bunch of resources investing in developing them in one place, I think using those to inform efforts in other places is a power of thinking regionally about some of these really hard issues. Like this workforce one is just tough. And as Erica said, it's a long-term play. This is not something we're just going to fix quickly. I'm curious, Jared, and this wasn't one we had talked about in advance, so sorry. You've been working with startups, entrepreneurs, and some pretty different potentially very different types of businesses. I'm curious, how much, I know they're pretty early, many of them, but what are they thinking about in terms of workforce and their needs, and where are they going to, and how they're going to attract and keep the people that they're going to need to start their businesses?
I think that it broadens a little bit the definition of workforce. Unique startups within the industry need both a vibrant workforce of foresters and loggers and truck drivers and manufacturers in order to launch a sustainable business or be successful. And then they're also including new types of skills. A startup might need a chemist, it might need an engineer, it might need software developers. And so it's, I think, broadening what workforce looks like in the industry to both require everything that's currently in the conversation, requires qualified and an actual quantity of workers there, and then is adding in these new types of skills that are required depending on what the business is. And so I think it makes it a little more challenging to think about the diversity of businesses and the types of workers they need, but it really kind of brings those two workforce paths together, and that in order for a startup to be successful, both of those workforces need to exist. They both need a dependable forest industry. They need to have like healthy forests. They need to have access to feedstock, and then they also need these new types of skills that allow them to both launch and grow their business.
Thanks. So I'd love to get the audience in here, so I'm going to hold our last question to our panel till the end. So we've got some time for questions, and we also want to ask for your input. As Andy said, we don't even pretend that we have all the ideas and know everything. A lot of this is going to be crowdsourcing good ideas and understanding what folks in the industry are excited about. So we have 3 questions to prompt, and I'm going to try to get these up on the screen. So excuse me. There are some note cards on your table, so we're happy to take questions from the audience, but we also want to give everyone a chance to share your thoughts if you don't want to come up to the mic. So on those note cards on the table, we'd love if you are willing to have you write and leave behind your answers to one or more of these questions. What innovations are you most excited about in the forest sector? For those of you who own or work in businesses, what do you see as the biggest opportunities to grow your business? Typo up there. And 3, for all of us, what do you think you need? We're really looking for those individual answers, not like what do we need generally, but what do you need as a business, as a government agency, as a service provider, as whatever hat or hats you're wearing today, to be able to innovate and adapt for success. So, and we also welcome any of you to ask a question or share your thoughts on any of those questions. We've got about 20 minutes or so for some conversation before we break. You can write your hats, if I heard the question right, write your hat on the card, that would be great. So on that third one, if you're willing to say, yeah, I'm a business, I work for a government agency, that would be helpful. And also if you want to write down the numbers of what questions you're answering. And we'll collect those afterwards, and that'll be sort of part of our, some of our initial data collection. But we also want to hear directly if folks have questions about anything that our panel has talked about, or again, want to share your thoughts with the whole room on any of these questions. We welcome those. I'm going to stand up so I can see. Someone's got to be first. All right, there's one. Oh, there's a mic in the middle. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you. My name's Jed Lipsky. I'm a logger, been a logger for over a half a century. I'm also honored to serve in the legislature and the Forestry Committee. So one thing I want to say is a challenge. I'm not saying it's overly impossible to overcome, but representing the sort of the first level, the base provider of round wood from relatively mountainous terrain in Vermont to feed into some of these business initiatives that make you've talked about. I have a few thoughts. And one problem which is most challenging has to do with what it costs to invest in low ground pressure technology, wheeled / bogey tracked harvesters as well as forwarders. Those are 7-figure investments today for anyone starting up. And unfortunately, with what we're experiencing in climate change, we used to count on, well, I'm going back almost half a century, we'd log 11 months a year, 10.5 months a year, do repairs in mud season or late stick season. But now, we're lucky this year if there were 7 weeks of frozen ground in most of Vermont, when there were normally, you could count on 3.5 months. This year, dry season logging, most of us have experienced 0 weeks since late May or the first week in June where we've been able to work at all. And so those issues in the supply chain are a real challenge. And just investing in low ground pressure, highly expensive technology is not a solution in a time of high interest rates and in some cases here in Vermont, decreasing markets or market conditions. So that's one challenge, and I have for years worked and volunteered to go to schools to talk in Lamoille High School about career opportunities in the forest products industry. And that workforce challenge and the interests and the viability, when you say, well, typically you might be able to have a good job for 5 months a year out of 12 months, that's not terribly enticing. So those are challenges that I think when we talk about developing markets and innovation in our region, that we need to really dig deep to come to how we're going to adapt to that. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Yeah, and I think that's as you said, pretty fundamental issue, because if we can't get the wood, then can't do innovative things with it. So I see a couple of our panelists want to jump in on that. Andy, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question back, if you don't mind just keeping the microphone. So just, I guess, first, great points, and I wish I had an answer, I think, but these are the sorts of things hopefully we're working on. But I was wondering, with the 7-figure numbers you were talking about and how difficult it is to purchase that equipment, I'm wondering, is that for you, or are you saying for someone else, for a new person? Is that the issue you're having, or someone else?
Well, I think it's an issue for anyone in the business. I have a cut-to-length system. My forwarder is 20 years old. I have a 15-year-old forwarder, which I'm selling this Saturday to a contractor in Connecticut. There are, and I guess I can use a name, there's Longview. They're very innovative and a well-organized, vertically integrated cut-to-length and forestry operation based in Heartland and Westminster, and they have been leaders in a large-scale investment in modern Scandinavian technology. So is it hard for them when they've barely been able to work, or a little logger like me who's barely been able to work? I think the challenge is the same. I use older equipment because it's more affordable, but it means higher maintenance costs and more downtime. So it's across the board. Forget someone young out of high school, always wanted to work in the woods. It's a real challenge. Yeah,
and I think they're great points, so I don't want to dismiss those in any way or minimize them. I've also noticed, though, as we talk about this, and I'll speak for myself, and something that I do is, you point to other people and say, oh, they should do that. So I talk to loggers, and they say, hey, the mills, they should be developing new markets. How come folks aren't developing markets for us? Mills are saying, how come loggers aren't hiring people? And then you talk to loggers, and they say, well, I don't want to. I can't make money. We're contracting. We're sort of being conservative. So I think, as we're trying to address this, I think big picture, it's really important to understand what we need collectively, but then also going back to what Joe was saying and you writing down what you need, it's really also helpful for us to understand individually, hey, no one will work on the green chain. Well, let's talk to someone that would potentially work on the green chain and say, how do we get you there? And that's, if we respond to that, then I think we'll be getting people. So just sort of throwing out that perspective as well.
Well, I can say one comment about how to get people in the green chain is open up some of these immigration initiatives. There are a lot of people on the southern border and other borders that would love to work, and green chain work is not beneath them.
To add to the, you had stated, the fact that you couldn't get into all the woods for the most part because of the conditions. I think you're going to also have to see investment by landowners in the earthwork side of it, the road infrastructure, kind of like we did back into the 60s and 70s as the river drives for moving logs were ending, that road infrastructure needed to be built out and the off-road networks to be able to access these more remote, timber lots. And so you see, especially in northern Maine, the vast majority of the road network is all off-highway, it's private landowner road network to feed that timber out to the mills. And I think you're going to have to see more investment like that because we don't get the freeze outs, we can't get in to get, the cedar and things like that. So there's going to need to be a certain level of investment into that road structure. And of course, there needs to be markets to justify that cost.
It's a great question to get us started. Other comments from the room on where you see needs and opportunities for innovation, or any questions for the panel? Yeah, Chris.
There we go. I was going to step it back one more, and I may steal a little bit of Tony's response. I think he was wanting to respond. But what he mentioned about technology, I think for landowners is really important. So as a timber landowner, we've seen how use of drones and some of this new technology has really helped foresters to be more efficient in their jobs. I think when I hear wall-to-wall inventory, on the one hand, it's kind of scary sounding, but the idea of being able to educate from that, both to use it as a tool as a landowner, but also, some of what Tony was mentioning about we can then pinpoint all the other benefits, like this harvest was done on this percentage, and it left, here's the carbon benefits, here, we can pull in a lot of this information that is out there readily available now. It also makes me think that the more that information we have as a state, like say in Vermont, where we have the challenges of terrain and the weather we've been facing, I wonder, and I let Tony maybe or others respond to this, but is there an opportunity there to know at a state level what we have and kind of identify, not in a way to try to force people to say you should be doing this on your property, but to say here is the resource we have. Here are maybe the places that the ground is better, but people aren't harvesting. Can we educate those people on why it could be beneficial to them and be a little more targeted in our outreach instead of just trying to say harvesting is good, our industry's great, you should support it, but specifically talk to those people in a way that resonates with them.
Yeah, I definitely had some similar thoughts in terms of what the challenges are, and I think more broadly, some of the issues just that we're talking about in terms of just the cost of operating a business, really relies on a consumer population that really values what we do and is willing to pay for an amazing climate smart commodity. And I think it's a frustrating time broadly for those of us in forestry, because trees are the best thing for carbon and wood is the best building material for carbon, yet most folks really, when it comes to payment for carbon, kind of get into their lane of we're going to pay people not to cut trees for carbon and not think about some of those other connections. And so what Chris is bringing up is that ability to be transparent about our management, talk about the benefits that are tied to them, but also I think just more broadly engage consumers in the state that we're making decisions about how we build buildings. I always joke, it seems like Chittenden County is in a race to build as many steel and concrete buildings as possible over the next few years, despite the fact that population would say they're extremely carbon conscious and environmentally educated individuals. And so I think getting people to pay a premium for some of these products, as well as to Chris's point, being able to be more transparent about these are, we're doing management, there's areas where management makes sense. If we want to be, global consumers and global citizens, there's parts of Vermont that we probably should be, growing more wood off of and cutting more wood from based on these operational opportunities and things like that this technology can really, I think, help us make those decisions. And in real time, really being able to get a drone out there, repeatedly actually monitor the harvest as it's occurring, see what's happening out there. So to me, a lot of this using this technology in this broader platform just to raise awareness that it's not just the trees in the woods, it's also the trees in this building that really are a big part of kind of that carbon strategy going forward, and hopefully we can make some inroads there.
Other questions or comments? Yeah, you guys can come up to or I'll just come to you. It's okay. he's got one. It's like hosting a talk show.
Okay. Joe Nelson, I'm a consulting forester, and just to follow up with what Chris said, and Joe, what you were just talking, or Tony, what you were talking about is the technology, and for someone like me or for some other folks in this room, we're small, we manage small private woodlots, and I look at, you know, I spend time over in New York with lime timber, and I see the innovations they do with the LiDAR and the inventory and the wall-to-wall work, you know, like you described, Tony, but it's really not that accessible for someone like me. You know, the small private forester working on 2 to 3 or 400 acre woodlots, and it'd be great if that technology were available for folks like us at a reasonable cost.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I mean, I think that's some of the goal of this work is really just like even LiDAR itself, you know, 5 years ago, there's one person that knew how to process that data in a given state, and just, you know, the products that we use now that we don't even know maybe we're derived from that. And so I think the goal with some of this work is really to get it into people's hands, similar to other technologies, Joe, so that we can, you know, make it much more accessible. So I think that's some of the hope, both with possible businesses, and I know there are some consultants already looking at doing LiDAR type inventories, but really making that much more accessible, and that you don't need to be doing the data processing yourself, but that somebody's able to do it quickly. So I think it's a great point, and where I think we're excited with the research piece is try to get that into everybody's hands that wants to use it.
Saw another hand. I'll come over.
Hi, I work a lot with entrepreneurs and business technical assistance folks that help entrepreneurs. There's a question for the gentleman in the accelerator field. I'm really interested in the work now of Amy Edmondson at Harvard Business School talking about intelligent failure, and I'm just curious, working with entrepreneurs, how you work with folks to manage any hurdles that they have to move through and to sort of move into an iterative mindset so that anything that might not go exactly as planned becomes a learning opportunity for a future innovation.
Yeah, I think at Due North we have this Forestry Accelerator, and we have other programs as well that are working with a range of entrepreneurs from different industries, some businesses that are locally or regionally focused, for some that have this vision to grow nationally or even globally. And you know, having also owned businesses myself and worked with other people that own businesses closely, I feel like this is kind of that, I guess, mental and emotional intelligence that's required. So I don't particularly know this research, but I think within the programs that we do a couple of things that maybe try to address this. One is, I mean, the first is like an understanding that any business is a risk. Businesses don't succeed, they don't, many businesses fail, and an understanding of that. And I think within both this industry and within our state, we should support that. Understand that failure is not always failure, that people launch, people take risks, and sometimes they don't work out. And what you're talking about is that iteration, that having to recognize when that doesn't work. And I know of other programs that actually go out and they celebrate those failures. They look at, I mean, of course, it's I guess, a little depressing. I mean, you might lose money, you've lost time, but that's part of the innovation process, is that things don't work out, and it's always taking this step forward. I think on the individual business level, it's trying to work with businesses to be as prepared as possible, to understand what they are doing, the market they're entering, whether they actually have an opportunity, so that at least they understand beforehand whether or not they're going to succeed. Or as they're going, they're able to make adjustments so that it's kind of, I guess, informed failure a little bit, or knowledgeable failure, so that it's not like just continually trying to drive forward for something that is never going to work out, that not admitting. And so I think for me, that's vital. I mean, we work a little less, I guess, on that emotional intelligence piece that I think is equally important, but really trying to work with businesses to make informed decisions so that they understand when something will be successful, or have an understanding of what decisions they can make if there needs to be a recognition that there just isn't a market demand for a particular product or service.
think we've got time for one more question. Yeah, Ken.
So Joe, as I listen to this conversation, a couple of things strike my mind, and one of them is that's striking my mind. It's the people part, and who lives here, and who does what, and obvious a lot of us have been doing what we're doing for all of our lives. We've grown up under a certain set of conditions that are not the same that they are. I mean, one of the things, this year particularly, the weather has seemed to conspire against the forest industry. Another set of folks in general that live here now don't understand us or don't understand this industry, but they love to buy local wood. And for me going forward, I see the challenge in finding those people that want to come and do the work I'm doing now, because I'm 65 and I'd like to think about other things. But it's I'm really happy with this thing that I've done for 40 to 50 years. It's good. The people you talk to and meet, you're in the wood business and people get it. But the other part I see, so finding that the people, and the people with the energy, the interest, and the drive, and then finding the landowners that really want to be engaged, because in Vermont, our landowner base is smaller, and those people that own the land have different priorities, and so there's becoming a wider disconnect to the folks that own the land and grow the trees. And then overall, it's that spectrum of, our, our public appearance. I think we struggle, particularly in Vermont, with a lot of folks that want to save us, that we need to be saved, and I get it. So that's enough for that.
No, I mean, that's all right, Ken. I mean, I think a couple of things. I think on the climate piece, absolutely, and that's something, there's been good conversation on that already, and I think looking at how forestry and industry are going to have to, do their best to adapt, and where are their good practices and things that we can raise up and say, these are, you got to think about these things now, because this is going to keep happening. I think on the people front, back to the workforce conversation, I think there are at least two sides to that. One is what we were talking about, making sure that this is a visible opportunity for people. I also think businesses have to adapt, right? I mean, you guys are doing this already, but adapting to new generations of workers and what they're looking for. What's the role of automation? In potentially taking out some of the jobs that are just harder to fill and frankly just less satisfying to do. So I think that's another piece of it too, is adapting to Ken, your point, like people are different. And then on the public perception thing, my personal hope, I'm on the advisory panel for the Future Forest Roadmap, which we're going to be talking about this afternoon. And I really think that's a necessary opportunity to elevate what we know to be the true narrative of forests in this state, and call out in a positive way some of the just lack of understanding or contradictions that the reason we have the forests that so many people value is because of all of you and the work that you do and the stewardship that you do. Being able to convey complex science to lay audiences and talk about carbon, in good ways like, Tony did. Like, let's think about both sides of the equation. So, Ken, you raise a really good and I think essential list of issues that I think we collectively are going to be grappling with for a long time to come. And I guess I'm hopeful, and I see Christine standing up, and it is about time. So I'll use this to close with apologies to the panel that we're not going to get back to you. That I think we're hopeful that this initiative can be one small piece of advancing some good ideas and solutions along those lines that we can both learn from each other about what's working, but also feedback to each other so that we can learn. So thank you all for listening. Please do write on those cards, leave them on the table. We'll work with Christine to figure out how we can feed back, if that seems interesting to the group, what emerged from that. But looking forward to today. I want to thank the panel, if you'll join me in doing that, for many of them coming a ways to be here. And with that, I'll turn it to Christine.
Well, thank you. Thanks, all of you, for being here and sharing what's happening on that regional level. Excited to see how that plays out. And so, yeah, again, if you write down information on those cards, if there's anything that you want to share that's more sensitive, just make a note of it, because, you know, we do want to share this, but we also want to be mindful that if there's something that you put down there that you want us to be careful with, please just let us know. So now we are going to break for, so in 15 minutes, we are going to reconvene over at Timberline Lodge, which is directly across the road. You can either go up this hill or out the other way, but it's right near where you parked. And so there are 3 concurrent sessions, so pick the one you want. There's 1 downstairs and 2 upstairs. There is an elevator for those who want it. And those will go till noon, and then at noon we will break and come back here for lunch and keep going. So with that, please make your way over, and we will start promptly at 10:30 over in Timberline. Thanks.